The world feels mad because you replaced integrity with reaction and thinking with noise. This is episode 8 of We Need to Talk. I am Matt, the Better Man Coach, and we're going to dig into a few different topics. But last week, I had Mr. Patrick Joseph Douglas on from Breathe, Trust, Flow to talk about so many different things in men's work, faith, his work with breathwork, and the transformative aspect of getting involved in breathwork and what it can do. And I realized while I was speaking to my friend Patrick that I've never spoken about my first experience with Wim Hof on camera. And it's something that I think there will be value in talking about because it might encourage more of you to get in and give it a go. Because breathwork is a free tool that's available to everybody. Wim Hof, thankfully, has an enormous YouTube page where you can click in and get guided completely for free by just sticking in your earphones, laying down and closing your eyes, maybe in a perfect world, putting on an eye mask, and just letting rip. Breathing is something that we do automatically. So when you switch to doing it intentionally, it's a moment of clear and easy meditation. For a lot of us men that struggle to try the meditation thing, because it sounds like a great idea, but in practicality, it's something that's difficult to start. I find it to be an easy route of access. And I want to frame before talking about my experience that it might not always be that deep. You might do breath work and you might get nothing from a mental perspective. You might just get the physical feels of this is really hard. Because another breathwork experience that I had at Tim Morrison's, I think it's called Spiritus. Maybe I should have double checked that one before hitting record. But Tim Morrison, he does breathwork all around the world. And I went to a workshop that he had in Ireland. It's very different to Wim Hof. It's a lot more laborsome. But one line that he said in the beginning of the workshop has stuck with me ever since. Breathwork is work. Because often when we think of breath work, we're like, great, I'm going to lie down, I'm going to relax, I'm going to do a bit of easy breathing. It's hard work. It's incredibly laborsome. It's more difficult than exercise, in my humble opinion. And through talking to Paddy last week, we also explored the idea that men's work is work also. We show up to men's circles thinking this is going to be a grand old day. It's not easy. You have to put in hard work in order to get something out of anything. The gym, work, growing your relationship. Relationships take work, whether they're romantic, whether they're platonic, whether they're parent to child or child to parent. Difficult things are worth working hard for. But with my wanting to tell the story of my first breathwork experience with Paddy, I was in a very different place in my life. I was in a different relationship with a woman that I thought I was going to spend my whole life with. That is no surprise to my partner when she listens to this. I had a very different business where my whole focus was on the physical. It was the Superhero Physique Academy. The only thing I cared about was getting people jacked, peeled, and looking like a superhero, which were not bad things. And the life that I had planned was not a bad life, but I constantly felt like there was something missing from inside me. Something that I was always looking for some external validation, looking for some way to fill it. And one of my clients at the time, Mr. David Patrick Farrell, who you will see on this podcast at the end of the month, I was putting him through, excuse me, I was putting him through a physical transformation. He got in incredible shape. You can see him on our different pages. He was silently going through the beginning stages of his sobriety journey and exploring his spirituality and digging into men's work and doing all these different things. And one day he invited me to meet his friend Paddy to go and experience Wim Hof for the cold, for the breath work, and just see what I could get from the experience. Luckily, Patrick's house at the time was a 2.5 minute walk from my work desk. And I thought that it would be half an hour. I'm like, bit of breath work, jumping in an ice bath, this is going to be quick. So that's what I planned for. And I ended up being an hour and a half late for work because it took 2 hours. We went over to the house, we sat down, we relaxed for a few minutes. Another of our friends, Dylan, was coming from where he works in a pub where he was bringing 40 kilo worth of ice and some black bags. And I'm like, this is going to be cold. Went up to the Breathwork studio space that he had upstairs, and the three of us lay down on the ground. Paddy explained how Wim Hof's going to work and checked that we didn't have any contraindications or issues or health concerns. And to put simply, what you do in a Wim Hof breathing structure is you inhale really hard through your nose. You inhale again through your mouth. You're going belly, chest, push it out. You do that 30 times in a row. And when you get to the last one, you pull it all the way in. You squeeze everything from your arse, your balls, your abs, and you squeeze it and push it up to your head. And you let it go. And then you sit in that empty space for a longer and longer period of time as you go through the rounds, because from a chemistry perspective, you are raising the levels of CO2 in your blood to make you more tolerant to less and less time needing to breathe. So you can't just lay down and not breathe for 5 minutes, you'll die. But if you go through a couple of rounds of that, by the time you get to the last one, oftentimes people go 5 minutes and even a little bit longer without really taking a breath. Now, that sounds a bit cray-cray if you've never done anything like that, and you're like, well, what's the point in doing that? As Patrick put it very eloquently on the podcast, it switches off your frontal cortex, and it allows you to get out of your own way, where your conscious and unconscious mind are now able to work freely. You've switched off that barrier in the front of your head that's telling you not to think about the hard things. And in some cases, which was my case in this experience, you can have a small amount of dimethyltryptamine released from your brain in order to have a transformative, otherworldly experience. At this point in my life, I was not very spiritual or faithful or active in anything outside of myself and the real tangible world that I could put my hands on. So as I lay there and I go through the rounds, I remember the first round, because the feeling of breathing in and out 30 times really hard is physically challenging. And it's trying to catch the rhythm and be able to feel it and see what's happening with my body. I don't remember anything between round 2 and round 5, except the moment that really changed everything in my life. I had this crazy transformative moment where I saw a bright light, color started to come, my whole body was tingling and twitching and curling up. And all of a sudden I saw this vision of my now partner, Anya, 2 beautiful children, and me running a business focused on men's development. Not just getting people shredded, but an actual purpose to my life, which is what I do now. The mission of helping 1 million men to be better than they are, or better than they were yesterday. To get to a place where you don't walk around dysregulated and feeling shit and feeling sad and feeling like you have no purpose in life. Because that's where I was, and that's what came through from me. I believe now that that was a message that came through from God. At the time, I thought it was a message in from my deep subconscious, but ultimately, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to people who listen to this, I have had a return to faith in the past couple of months. So a lot of things are being maybe given more context since that whatever you believe in is perfectly fine. If you want to say the universe, if you want to say Allah, Buddha, whatever it is that you give the title to, because a line I pandered out on the last podcast was a quote from Jimmy Carr that was a quote from the bassist from AC/DC, that God is just the name that we give to the blanket that we use to cover the mysteries that we don't understand in the world. Me receiving that download or seeing that vision of what my future could be woke me up and had my whole body on fire just from the labor of the breath, to where when we walked downstairs and got into the 40 kilo of ice and water that I'd never experienced before, I didn't feel cold. My skin felt hot. My body felt like it was vibrating. The cold was not cold. As Wim Hof says, the cold was my warm friend. And when I came out of it, I'm like, whoa, I have to go and have some difficult conversations. I have to change everything about my life, which is not always advisable after a deep breath work or plant medicine or men's circle or therapy session, because you're supposed to take a little bit of time to integrate and say, what should I be doing with this information? Let's take a couple of days or even a couple of weeks It's a process. But this was such a powerful moment of change for me that I knew everything needed to change. Now, in the exact moment where I looked and realized we've been here for 2 hours, I had to run across the road, get to work as quick as I could because my phone was off during that whole experience. They were not happy that I was an hour and a half late. Not like me. I was apologetic in that I didn't understand what I was about to step into. But in the days that followed, I did my first journaling experience. This is something I have talked about, where I went to a local coffee shop close to where I worked, opened up my laptop, because at the time, and even today, I feel more comfortable sitting and typing than I do sitting and writing. And I said, I'm going to do 5 minutes of journaling and just get some of this out of here and put it onto the digital paper so that I can read it back in an honest and clear way, as if I was feeding back to a friend. And the 5 minutes of journaling turned out to be 3 hours of journaling, where I completely opened up to myself about what my life had been like up until that point, what I wanted my life to be like going forward, and the actions that I needed to take. The first one being having that difficult conversation with the woman that thought I was going to spend my whole life with her. But up until that time, there was already cracks and issues and problems and deviations from how the two of us saw the world and where I saw my life going. And it was tough because on the off chance that this person happens to listen to this, I had and still have love for her, but I had discovered that I had complete and true deep love with my at the time friend, Anya, who is now going to be my wife when I ask her that question this year. And hopefully she says yes, based off our current conversations. But that was tough. It was one of the toughest conversations I've had to have to sit this person down and say, we are not going to be together anymore. You need to find what your life is going to be like. Now, many of you listen to this have been through breakups. Some of the men listening to this, if we're in Dublin or any part of the world, but I know my Dublin men well, have cheated on their partners. They have gone years of not being happy in a relationship, and that has busted out into infidelity and things where you're leaking integrity because you're not doing the right thing. Commonly in Ireland, it's like a known thing that you just be unhappy and dig into a relationship, and that's just the old Catholic way. That wasn't going to be for me. So my actions of go and end this relationship, go and have the conversation then with Anya to say, hey, this is my plan. This is what I want. I love you. Let's see where this is going to go. And hoping that the download came from the right place and that she felt the same way. And thankfully, she did. We now live together. We're developing our life. We're talking about the babies. We're doing all of those things. It worked out. Your first breathwork experience probably won't be that. Your first breathwork experience will probably be, this feels weird. I don't know what I'm feeling. Why do my feet tingle? This is hard. Did I do enough breaths? Did I do 30? Should I do another one? It's not going to be that simple. I don't think I got lucky. I think I was in the right place at the right time, and my body was screaming out. My mind was screaming out, and my soul and spirit was like, it's time. We need you to cop on and see what you need to do. It was and has been, even until recently, a period of turmoil in my internal dialogue with getting all of these ideas to line up with the actions in life that I live in order to be able to show up and do the things that are aligned with the purpose of why I'm on this planet for this life. And even right now, it's a ever evolving thing, but it's a moment in my life where I am now fully accepting that my past is my past and I have my mission, I have my goals, and I need to show up and do it. Part of that is doing this podcast, is me speaking about these things. If even one person listens to one of these episodes and gets that moment of acceptance by knowing somebody else is going through something similar to them, that they get out of their own way and do the things they need to do, this podcast and all the energy and money and effort that I put into it is completely worth it. The next thing that I want to talk about, being that I alluded to the integrity leak, is somewhere this past week where I did not leak integrity and I stood over my own values and words in a way that perhaps in the past I would not have. I'm not going to mention the company, but I'd been reached out to by a company. I'm not even going to say the industry because I don't want anybody to cop what this is because I don't want to disrespect them. But I was given an offer to work with a company, get some sponsorship, get some products, potentially get paid some money for doing the things. And initially I said, yeah, do you know what? This is good. This is what I'm seeking out. I need resources to help build a podcast. And who doesn't like some free stuff? But there was a few steps in order to make it happen. There were some contracts to sign. There were some digital things to sort out. And after having initially said yes, when it came to signing the paperwork and doing all the little bits and pieces, it actually hit me that I'm like, this company is asking me to start promoting what they have before I've actually used what they have. And I have no idea if it's any good. So for me, and after looking at them, in no disrespect, they're terrible at what they do. They're incredible at marketing. So lots of people buy the stuff. It's a successful company. What goes into the stuff that they put out, the quality level, the, how do I put this? The one of one, the special thing about them, it lacks. They don't have anything special. So when I thought about it, I realized that if I took that money, if I took that free stuff, if I started saying, yeah, you should go and buy this stuff, I would be leaking integrity like the people on the Epstein list on a regular, because I would be taking something of payment for telling you guys to use something I don't believe in. So I reached out and said, listen, I'm sorry. I said that I was going to do this, but upon further thought, unless you would be willing to send me the stuff and let me try it myself, see if I like it, without the obligation to tell the world it's great, I'm not in. In this case, they weren't down for that. They were like, our stuff's great. You should just trust our word. And I said, well, I don't, because I've looked at what you do and I'm not going to share what you have. Integrity costs up front, lies cost later. And after saying something about the Epstein people, I do also want to kind of talk about that, because the opening line around the world feels mad because you've replaced integrity with reaction and thinking with noise, that's about all of that. Because, as I'm sure is no surprise, you've definitely heard this on the news or through your social media. I don't watch the news. Social media is kind of my news. There has been more Epstein list email things. I don't really pay full attention to it, but a bunch of stuff was released in the last week. And what I have noticed is there has been an outpour of reaction and emotion in the wrong places. Everything that happened to do with that person, allegedly, because I have to say allegedly, I don't know, I wasn't there. Everything that happened there was fucking awful. They did terrible, disgusting things, and this is in no way me vouching or trying to strawman the argument that they're bad people. However, just because somebody has been named in an email list that they had correspondence with a horrible person doesn't mean that the things that they have done that are good in the world now turn terrible. Peter Attia, for example, never met the man. I've heard him speak on many podcasts. I have read many papers that he's put out, and he's done a lot in the world of promoting testosterone replacement therapy. Obviously, that's part of his business, so he is financially motivated to do it. TRT is done by a lot of different doctors and a lot of different companies across the world in so many different ways. And if you don't know about it in Ireland, up until very recently, the only TRT, by the way, is testosterone replacement therapy. The only TRT option was getting a bolus, which is when you do an enormous amount of a drug one time and then have a long gap before you do it again. Bolus dose of testosterone once every 4 to 6 weeks. You would get a 4 milliliter, 1,000 milligram shot of testosterone decoinate, and then you wouldn't get one for like 6 weeks. There's many problems with administering TRT that way. One being the actual discomfort and pain of that, where you have 4 milliliters of oil jabbed into your arse. People get issues with that. The more pressing issue with that method of administration is that you get a huge spike in testosterone, and then it comes down, in theory, slowly, but it comes down faster than people think. So you feel really great for a couple of days. You start to feel worse and worse and worse and worse. And because your testosterone levels are jumping up and dropping down, You're not getting consistent levels, so you're getting all of the worst parts of the side effects, the estrogen changes that result in acne and mood changes and all the things that you're trying to avoid by doing TRT. Thanks to the kind of research and rhetoric and things that he's put out and other people around better ways to do TRT, now it's becoming more normal where people do what they would kind of call microdosing TRT, which is doing a small dose every day. That interval, from everything that I've seen in all papers and all people that are smarter than me in discussing that space, that seems to be the best way to do it. And he's been instrumental in getting that out as a way of doing it. That does not exonerate him if he did any terrible things or was involved and knew that people were doing terrible things. But I've seen people do things like take his book and throw it in the bin and make their big hullabaloo on social media of going, I've unfollowed this horrible man. And to me, that is just virtue signaling. You're like, look how great I am because I'm pointing out that this horrible person I'm no longer following and I'm not going to read their stuff. Another person that's confirmed that was on that island long ago, Stephen Hawking. Apparently he did some awful stuff when he was on the island. Who knows? This is not an episode about the conspiracies of what happened or did not happen on that island and the people involved in it. Him being there and doing horrible things. How much of an impact did he make to the space of theoretical physics and as a result, every other science in the world? He made incredible breakthroughs across physics and wrote papers that I have no even close to ability to understand some of the things that he said. If people saw what he got up to on the island and said, now all of the scientific breakthroughs he's ever had are now null and void, that doesn't make any sense. And to circle around on this and be super, super, super clear, I am not making anything they did okay on that island. Whatever they did can make them a dog shit human being, but it doesn't take away the truth of any of the good work they may have done separately to that. Totally fair to say, going forward, the people that were involved in all those kind of things, let's move to no longer financially support them. Let's move to no longer give them a voice, give them a platform. But the previous work that's already out there, maybe we make it all free so all the good information they've got, people can access for free and use to improve the world. So it's just a little bit of food for thought that if facts die with the messenger, we're finished. Because there's so many people that you've probably met across the scope of your life who have made a positive impact to your life. And then they do something awful, something that you consider horrible and you fall out. Does it mean that all the good things they did before you need to now completely forget? Absolutely not. You change how you act with them going forward, but the positive inputs previous to that, you can still accept. It doesn't make you a bad person to still see that 1 + 1 = 2 just because the person that figured out 1 + 1 = 2 turned out to be a satanic sex cult, pedophile, whatever the fuck they are. Who knows? But what's actually going wrong in the world, to go a little more specific on those words, outrage is replacing reasoning. Emotion is rewarded over accuracy. Nuance feels unsafe. Men are outsourcing judgment to whoever they follow on social media. How many people do you know that will just dig into the person they like and refuse to see the bad in them? Certainty spreads faster than the truth. Outrage feels like thinking, but it isn't. People aren't curious anymore. They are tribal. And in my space of the world, which is fitness, it is the most tribal space on the internet. When it comes to your diet, how many people have you talked to who are vegan? And they're like, if you're not vegan, you are the devil. Like, if you're not vegan, you are killing all the animals and you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to your health. And on the other spectrum, if you're carnivore, you're like, if you're a vegan, you're retarded. It gets tribal. And with training, same thing. People are like, I'm a powerlifter. Everything that's not powerlifting is terrible. Or I'm a functional movement expert. If you lift a barbell, you're a moron. We need to stop being tribal when it comes to information that can be a fact or it can be false. Look at it and find out for yourself which is true, which is not. Don't just believe it because your favorite social media person says it's true. So, with all of this, I want to call us back and call the men back to responsibility because most men already know the truth. Comfort keeps them numb, clarity demands action, stillness removes escape routes. Men don't need more information. We need fewer escape routes because stillness exposes what noise protects. And these are a bunch of affirmations to scream in a mirror. But all of that to say, start trusting your gut, but start being more open to what can be true and what can be false. Don't believe things the first time you hear them because it's not to, as I said, placate that somebody that was on that awful island might still have done some right things and to give them a pass. I'm not even close to saying that. I'm in the camp. If you've done something to a child, we should throw you in a wood chipper, simple as black and white. But just take a moment to see what information might be useful out of all of that. And the real takeaway that I want you to take from this episode is actually around exploring your own journey in every space that you're in. So whether that be looking after your mental health by trying to dig into breathwork, which has been, as I talked about, completely life-changing for me. And it's something that's free that you can get on YouTube. You don't need to pay a guru. You don't need to pay anybody to get access to. You just dive in, stick your headphones in, close your eyes, and give it a try. The other thing that I got to talk about is the actual Better Man program. And I have done some moving around what we do. And I'm going to see, is this possible? I think it is to share my screen. If this works, great. If it did not, okay. But we are going to run through what you see when you click the link that is in my show notes for this. This page is what you will get landed on when you're interested in working with me. And I want to talk about the 3 pillars of the program: physical capacity, emotional mastery, and dedication to your system. PEDs. PEDs is the best title I could come up with for a 3-part pillar. And really what it's about is physical capacity means being capable of doing anything that you need to do with your body. And that is like the foundational block work of what I do with the program. Whether you want to be stronger, get more muscular, get leaner because you're holding a little bit too much body fat, you feel low energy, you don't feel healthy, that's the first thing we address in the Better Man program. It is primarily still a fitness program. I have 15 years of experience in helping people get strong, build muscle, prep for bodybuilding shows, prep for powerlifting competitions, get healthy, get faster for different running, different athletic endeavors. You name it, I've done it. I've helped men and women, but the focus of my program now is men because of the other bigger parts of the program, where we dig into emotional mastery, which sounds like a bit of a buzzword. But really what emotional mastery is understanding your own feelings so that when something triggers you, and that word in and of itself is going to trigger you when you hear it, there will be things that happened in your life that created a response in your mind that when something similar happens, you get an emotional response from. If you have no control over that response, you are walking around the world ready to blow at any moment. If you understand what your triggers are, and what your emotional spectrum is, when bad or challenging things pop up in your life that would usually make you blow up, you have a chance to be able to take hold of that and respond instead of react. And being able to do that in your relationship with your partner, in your relationship with your kids, or in tough work situations can completely change the trajectory of your life. Because everyone listening to this right now will have moments across their life where instead of responding to something that upset them, they blew the fuck up and screamed the gaff down, said something they didn't mean, did something they wish they could take back, that changed their life in a negative way. Imagine if you had the tools to not do that because you take time to understand what makes you you so you can respond to it better. That is the most important part of the program for me. Never mind the getting you jacked and you're feeling physically confident in every room you walk into. That is the biggest part for me. And the dedicated to your system section of what I do in the program. Every single man has a different version of a perfect life. So every single one of you needs the capability to build a system around your whole life. And what I mean by system, to make it simple, is a routine and some tools that you use to throw in when your routine goes out the window. For example, it might be training 3 times a week, doing your breath work once a week, and having a scheduled moment to sit with yourself and your thoughts to regulate and show up in the rest of your life. Everything inside the program is around covering those 3 pillars so that your physical body is where it needs to be, your emotions are in check, and that you know what to do when your routine goes to shit. Layered into all of that is an invitation to go and work deeper on everything that's made you you as a human, to potentially explore your spirituality and your faith. That is episode 8 of We Need to Talk. I have been really investing a lot of my energy into developing the skill of sitting down and talking into the dark void of the camera and building this podcast. I made a relatively big move in the past few days of trancing my arm with asking huge podcasters to come on my show or to let me on theirs, to no avail short term, shockingly, because I'm somebody with not much of a following and a 7-episode podcast. But one of them, Mr. James Smith, told me on Instagram that if I can get my podcast to have more downloads than his, when and if he is in Ireland, he will come on my show. So if you enjoy what I do, if you get value from these episodes, I've not done the please follow my podcast and please share it with your friends thing yet, but I'm going to start doing it now because I'm going to be pig-headed about this and beat that man's downloads. He is like a human marmite, and I put that on my story, and what that means is people either love him or hate him. But either way, I have a really good idea for a conversation with him, to ask him some questions I don't think anybody has ever asked him that will bring enormous value to the men that listen to my show. So please, if you like what I do and you want to see me talk to James Smith, follow the podcast, share it with your mates, comment, do all the engagement things to just put it out there. It's free for you to share this, so I would love you forever if you do it. To finish this one off, as I talked about the program, and I'm not going to be screaming about the program every episode, but that link is always in the show notes. It's always in the description on YouTube. Click it. Give me your email so that I can email you with some level of regularity about value and occasionally offers. You can find out what the price options are and what the program looks like once you give me the email. There's a page there and it runs through it all. If it feels good for you and right for you, I'll see you inside the program. If not, you'll see me on your screen and hear me in your ears next Friday.